Behind a glowing screen, letter by letter, this is how fear has been formed.
I'm going to begin this by saying that it shows this online community because it has the exposure of over 1.4 million people.
In a post on the social media site Reddit, a girl named Lindsay desperately begs for someone's help.
If anyone reading this is in Mammoth, Arizona, please contact me immediately.
She says it started in the tiny town's daycare. A worker collapsed, dead, bleeding from her eye. Then 9 children fell victim to similar symptoms, and less than a week later,
18 people who had indirect contact with the children were reported missing or dead.
An Ebola-like disease had taken over Mammoth. People bruised, bleeding, dying in the middle of streets, and Lindsay was about to become one of them.
I had a breakdown the other day where I just screamed at the wall and cried, and there was blood in my tears.
If you're skeptical, just read the story's comments. Hundreds of people wrote in panic.
My neighbor in Mammoth has a sign on her window that just reads, "Help me."
My mom called me yesterday, and she said there were tanks in the town.
I drove to Mammoth to investigate myself, but couldn't get in. Police were blocking the road and wouldn't tell me why.
But if you really take a trip to the small town, this is not where you'll find their chief of police.
I simply tell them it's all a hoax.
That's right, a hoax, one that Mammoth's top cop says has thrust this town directly into the spotlight.
We received calls from Texas, Florida, Maine, Wisconsin, so it's really gone widespread.
Mammoth Police Department.
Those calls for days.
What's your emergency?
Even tying up Mammoth's 911 dispatcher.
Made it more difficult to answer any actual emergencies.
And if people weren't calling the police,
Corkers, one stop.
they were calling the locals.
Me and my son were here in the store. From somebody back in New York.
My dad handed me the phone. It happened to be like one of the craziest phone calls I've ever had. Have you seen anybody with bruises all over their faces or bleeding from their ears and eyes?
Hello? 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 A lot of calls. Hello? I just started like, what's going on?
Well, to answer that question, you have to understand Reddit. In the online community, different message boards have different goals. The one Lindsay posted on, called No Sleep, includes scary, fictional stories where readers play along in the comments.
After reading it, it was actually quite believable.
And some are saying that's dangerous. A few strokes of a keyboard could have massive negative impacts, but before you blame modern times,
In the War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells.
don't forget about this. In 1938, the Columbia Radio Broadcasting System took a famous story about an alien invasion and put it right into the homes of millions of Americans.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's indescribable. I can hardly force myself to keep looking at it. It's so awful. Its eyes are black.
Of course, there were no aliens, but a nation went into
panic that sweeps around the globe.
People clogged up the freeways, screamed in the middle of streets, rumors that some even committed suicide. So this,
The sirens have me terrified.
doesn't seem so bad.
Oh, somebody just wants to be famous. I hope they can.
Locals say it's simply comical.
Oh, yeah.
And coming from the mayor himself,
Want everybody to come and see that there's no dead bodies here. There's no breakouts. Everybody's business as usual here.
but what they've learned is that even in a town tucked away in the middle of the desert, no one is immune to these keys and the fear they can create. Lindsay's scary story also said the National Guard had come into Mammoth to pose as locals to keep the Ebola-like outbreak quiet. I can assure you, though, the people who we spoke to are who they say they are. As for Lindsay, she is not. I spoke with the person who wrote the original post. They wouldn't go on camera because of the backlash they've been getting, but they did want to apologize to anyone in Mammoth who's annoyed by all of those calls. Their answers to my other questions on our website, KGUN9.com. In the newsroom, Liz Kotelik, KGUN 9 on your side.